Naughty Dog used to be the crown jewel at PlayStation, a studio that could do no wrong, that created unforgettable experiences that millions loved. Then The Last of Us Part 2 happened, and they've been picking up the pieces ever since. But the question remains, what happened to Naughty Dog? Why are they not releasing not even a single game all this generation? And more importantly, why are the egos of current-day Western game developers so fragile? There's a lot, but as seen here from Games Radar, Intergalactic, Naughty Dog's next game, is in a really tough spot right now. A former developer of Naughty Dog spoke openly about how the studio is currently operating with what they call an unsustainable schedule, which is putting it lightly. The last thing Naughty Dog had that came out was The Last of Us Part 2 remastered in 2024, according to Benson Russell, who's the ex-Naughty Dog developer in this article. He's now a gaming consultant on major AAA and then some, and that is not a good thing at all. I mean, the whole Naughty Dog thing, not him being consultant anyways. And shows that Naughty Dog is drowning in its own destructive and really toxic ways when it comes to game development these days. Benson Russell calls Naughty Dog's game release schedule as unsustainable and lethargic, because this means that Intergalactic, their next game, might miss the PS5 generation completely at this point, making it the first time in Naughty Dog's history that they completely missed an entire generation of PlayStation consoles without a single new game coming out. As Russell puts it here, they're one of the key stakeholders that get PlayStation sold, right? So when you think about it, they have not put an original IP out on this platform. The only thing they've done is The Last of Us remake, which he's right, the only newish game I guess is that remake of the first Last of Us, obviously to release it in tandem with the HBO show's first season. But Russell said more, as you can see there, that Intergalactic might be heading for another Last of Us 2 situation. And because of that, in Russell's opinion, Naughty Dog is going to have to edit the game down, which is going to cause even further delays. Russell also believes that Naughty Dog is biting off way more than they should with the space setting with Intergalactic as well. Because obviously all of Naughty Dog's games for at least the past 10 years or so have been about rugged North American landscapes or, treasure hunters like Nathan Drake, traveling to the Himalayas or the desert, actual places on planet Earth. Intergalactic is also said to have a robust melee combat system, which is, something Naughty Dog isn't really known for. Most of their games, outside of Crash Bandicoot, are third-person shooters to some regard. Uncharted is a great example of this. Uncharted, in my opinion, that is Naughty Dog at their best. I mean, they released all 3 Uncharted games in a timely manner of like 2 or so years between games, while still offering graphical leaps and all the pulse-pounding action. I love that trilogy of games, dude. They're so great. And I would love to have that version of Naughty Dog again. Instead, we're left with a Naughty Dog where all the original directors and leaders like Amy Hennig or Bruce Straley, who directed the first Last of Us game, are all gone now. Naughty Dog has, by and large, kind of just become Neil Druckmann's prison island of sorts, where Neil is just free to do whatever he wants to. It's not to say that Neil can't make good games somewhat. I mean, Uncharted 4 was directed by Neil Druckmann, although that game's development was apparently, nothing short of crazy, since internally, it's already been well documented that Neil, Bruce, and Amy, they all clashed behind the scenes on Uncharted 4. Wow, who could imagine that one happening? And then it led to people like Amy Hennig leaving Naughty Dog altogether, as we all know. The other huge problem that plagued Naughty Dog post-Uncharted 4 was someone we know as Anita Sarkeesian. I did a whole mini documentary on Anita Sarkeesian recently on the channel, but there's a section in that video where I brought up how Neil Druckmann not only gave an award on stage to Anita in front of dozens of other game developers, but openly admitted that Anita's influences on Naughty Dog changed the studio as well, for the better, according to Neil Druckmann. And change it did, since we all know what happened with The Last of Us 2's story, and how absolutely divisive that game's story and characters were, right? The male hero gutted. An all-female playable cast, not to mention Uncharted ending insinuating that it too would follow Cassie Drake, the daughter of Nathan and Elena eventually, and of course Intergalactic also having a female lead, again in the form of Jordan Munn. This would now make every single Naughty Dog franchise now being led by female characters exclusively. And if there are any male characters on the roster, it's someone who's, transgender, like the Acolyte kid in Last of Us Part 2, which doesn't really make any sense to me at all. Like, how is Lev, that's the name of the character, who's born female, now identifies as male, supposed to, make sense in that world? I mean, in the world of The Last of Us, right? Things like basic needs, food, medication, are already near impossible to come across. Stuff like cough medicine, even, is effectively gold in that post-apocalypse. Yet I'm supposed to believe that a random survivor who escapes some crazy religious cult is able to find puberty blockers to handle their transition in a post-apocalypse world that would not have that sort of medication readily available in any sort of amount, and for it to even exist would likely be impossible too. Didn't the world end in like the early 2000s in The Last of Us's world? How would Lev even transition their gender if such medicine wasn't even readily available or even developed until later anyways? Like, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's not even like being a bigot or anything. It's just logistically, none of it could actually realistically happen given the circumstances of the game that it's operating within. But again, we have, Anita Sarkeesian to blame for the degradation of Naughty Dog as a developer, I guess. Sure, they're a studio full of talented game developers who know how to make games well, then no one really questions that, right? They have world-class designers, artists, engineers, everything. But it's all being led by a crazy person with an ego the size of Jupiter, Neil Druckmann. So it's no wonder why the Intergalactic game might miss the PS5 generation. Likely at this point, Intergalactic's going to be a PS6 launch title, with a cross-gen version available on PS5 at least. But it still doesn't fix the fact that Naughty Dog is taking centuries to release a single game in this landscape, when every other studio, pretty much at their level, is not only releasing games faster, but better too. From Software has released Elden Ring, Night Rain, and they will release the Duskbloods, and they also had Shadow of the Erdtree, which was a massive expansion in a shorter time frame than Naughty Dog has released between Last of Us 2 and Intergalactic. This is why I trust what Benson Russell, that ex-Naughty Dog developer, is saying there in the article, because he's worked on these games before. He knows their design philosophy, and even he's skeptical that Naughty Dog can nail melee combat with their next game, as Russell says it here. Naughty Dog has been trying to understand melee combat for years, but they knew that it would be a massive investment to get it right, so they never really did it. Well anyways. But Benson still believes that this way of making games, the Naughty Dog way, it needs to be buried and left to rot. Here's what he said in the interview. I genuinely think these 7-year projects, you can get them back down to 5. I think you could at least cut 2 years off of them, if not maybe a little more. Just by defining yourself, getting that North Star solid right in the beginning, and it's not a difficult thing to do. Again, this guy worked on Uncharted, Last of Us, and more, right? He knows what he's talking about here. He was there for the very well documented crunch times that Naughty Dog imposed on developers for their games. He probably was a part of it too. Like how infamously Last of Us Part 2 had so much crunch that developers were doing 100-hour work weeks multiple weeks in a row just to get the game done on time, which it then got leaked online. The whole game, because again, employees had enough of Naughty Dog's horrible work-life balance, and then what happened. But it's interesting how Russell brings up the North Star concept, because it's actually a good way of looking at things. Most studios understand who they are and what they're making, and they kind of just stick to it. Again, let's use From Software as an example, right? Their North Star is Soulsborne games, obviously, because they created the entire concept themselves, right, with Demon Souls originally on the PlayStation 3. So naturally, every game you play, be it Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, even stuff like Armored Core, these games may differ in slight ways here or there, but the North Star in this instance is they are, by and large, Soulsborne games at their core. That's what they are. They are always melee-focused, exploration-based RPG video games. Even if in, say, Armored Core's case, you can shoot mounted cannons on your mech's shoulders. It's the same as if like blasting your shotgun in Bloodborne or shooting an arrow in Dark Souls. The core gameplay philosophy of a FromSoft game is still big scary enemy, you have the tools to fight it, now do it while something epic happens. You understand that, you get that, that's the North Star. Even Rockstar, for example, they have their own North Star, if you will, right? They know that GTA and Red Dead are third-person shooter games at their core. It's why it's simple to transition from playing GTA to Red Dead. I'm shooting with an assault rifle in a sports car, yeah, that transitions pretty nicely to cowboy revolver and horse instead. It makes sense, you get it. With Naughty Dog, the problem here is with Intergalactic, according to Russell and such, is they don't really have a North Star, because their star or direction keeps changing, right? It's like a ship in open sea, unable to determine where they need to go. And the captain has really no idea which way to pilot his ship, until eventually, after months of open sea, the hungry crew will cry mutiny and throw their captain overboard, and who can really blame them? That's sort of what Naughty Dog feels like right now. Intergalactic is taking too long. That game has to now be the greatest game ever made, pretty much, in the history of that studio in order to justify its insane developer cycle. But the problems that plague this is, will it though? Because ultimately the game is being led by none other than Neil Druckmann of all people. The same guy who, like I said, allowed Anita Sarkeesian to completely ruin the design philosophy of stories and characters with her modernity feminism nonsense that we're still dealing with to this day. Intergalactic, even in its first trailer to me, it looks dated as it can get. I don't mean graphically either. I mean in the main character's design, the bald-headed gruff woman who is better than anyone around her. Even the eye-patch Snake Plissken-like woman on the TV talking to Jordan Munn like she's a gender-bent Escape from New York knockoff design concept. It all screams this is the sort of game that Anita Sarkeesian would lose her collective mind over if she was to play it right now, but we know what Anita wants is not what sells nor what people want. All that happens when you chase what Anita Sarkeesian wants is, well, oblivion. And Naughty Dog needs a win, a really big one. Otherwise, Neil Druckmann might be cooked, guys. But I'm already skeptical considering the fact that his big brain idea for Intergalactic is, what if religion was bad? But we all know he's only going to target one specific kind of religion and leave all the other ones alone as they always do. But there was another big reason for why Naughty Dog hasn't released anything of note for so long. It's because of live service slop. And Sony being absolute morons who don't understand what their fan base even wants this generation. You see, Naughty Dog was working on a live service Last of Us game called Last of Us Factions or Last of Us Online. If you played the original game, which you probably did, The Last of Us launched with a pretty great and interesting multiplayer component that was surprisingly fun to do. You would go into these matches, hunt other players for resources, and depending on how well you did, your camp of people would either grow or dwindle based on your performance. And the idea was the better that you got, the more lives that you would save. Obviously, it would be crushing if you got slapped around only to find out that half of your camp got cooked because you suck and couldn't secure any medical supplies. Anyways, the idea was to take this mode and blow it up into a huge live service game. And on paper, seems like a great idea. An actual live service game from Sony that both made sense thematically within the context of the world it took place in and could have been something interesting to play. But instead, Naughty Dog and Sony axed the entire game, canceled it quite literally at the last minute before it was meant to be revealed. And that house of cards came tumbling down soon after. Well, it turns out this is another big reason why Naughty Dog hasn't released anything either. Because you see, it wasn't just a small fringe team at the studio working on this game, it was actually the majority of Naughty Dog itself that was working to make this game a reality. I'm not even kidding. Look at this from massivelyop.com. There was a report here based on Bloomberg that confirms just that. So what happened exactly? Well, it's another big FU in Sony's live service slaughter, because after part 2 in 2020, the majority of Naughty Dog shifted to this Last of Us Online, as Bloomberg called it. They cited that this game was meant to be a living, breathing version of The Last of Us's post-apocalypse that you could exist in. The idea was to have players team up, hunt each other, think Ark Raiders, but you know, Last of Us, obviously. The problem was this game was allocating way too many resources at Naughty Dog, and the idea was the scope and energy that was needed to keep this sort of thing alive would have turned Naughty Dog into a live service studio over, you know, what it originally was, a single player one. So the game, like I said, was canceled right before it was meant to be announced officially. But the stupid part was that because of Last of Us Online, Naughty Dog had barely anybody working on Intergalactic. Yeah, I know. So technically speaking, when this game was canceled, which was years after part 2, by the way, and millions were already spent, Naughty Dog didn't actually start real true development on Intergalactic until after Last of Us Online was already canceled. So for us as players looking for the next Naughty Dog game, we're thinking, wow, it's been 6 whole years since Last of Us Part 2. I wonder where Naughty Dog's next game is. And what we're realizing is if Last of Us Online was never greenlit because of Sony's stupid live service nonsense, Intergalactic would very likely be out already or coming out soon at least. We don't even have a release window for Intergalactic right now. Some sites claim it's 2028, but nothing's really concrete. My question is, why not just take this Last of Us Online game, move it to a support studio if the bulk of the development was already done? Why waste it? I understand now making Naughty Dog into a live service studio, yeah, that would be stupid, I get this, but surely to have all of that work already done. God knows how many guns were modeled, levels, and then some, and then to just not use it. That seems like a wasted opportunity to me. Sure, yes, okay, Concord, bad idea. Nobody wanted that, but people love The Last of Us. They would actually want to play something like that, where they could hunt others and build clans and all that sort of stuff in their own settlements and whatever. And it's so bizarre to me that Sony greenlights and releases live service games for the most part that people just don't want, but they cancel the ones that actually seem interesting. Outside of Helldivers 2, nothing Sony has done live service-wise is really worth the squeeze that it takes to enjoy it. Marathon is dead. I mean, look at the Steam charts here. What do you mean Bungie's $300 million live service gamble has only 2,166 players on Steam right now with a 24-hour peak of not even 3,300 players? Like, pull the plug already. What are we doing? Yet Destiny 2, as you can see there via Steam charts, is almost at 20,000 users right now with a 24-hour peak of almost 30,000 users. So that's almost like 10 times the users on Destiny 2, a game Bungie ended support for over Marathon, the game they're actively still working on despite nobody playing it. Tell me why, like I'm a 5-year-old kid, that Marathon is allowed to exist but a Last of Us Online Extraction PvPvE game isn't. Like, please, okay, I'm all ears. Tell me how this was not the move to go with. And before anyone says, nah, he's lying, there's no way Naughty Dog was ruined by a side project like Last of Us Online. Okay, well, here's IGN on screen confirming it too. There you go. Use your eyes. It wasn't a side project. It was their main focus for years. If you want to know how much time and effort was wasted on this Last of Us Online game, as IGN says it here, the game was in development for 7 years and was already 80% finished by the time it was canceled completely. I want you to understand how bad that is. They spent longer developing this canceled live service game than it took for Naughty Dog to create and release the entire Uncharted trilogy on PlayStation 3. That is baffling to me. But this is what I mean. This is why Naughty Dog and really every Sony studio needs to stop these live service ambitions. Why is this something they think that it can work? It can't. We should have been seeing trailers for the game after Intergalactic by now, probably Last of Us 3. And by the looks of it, by the time we get a Last of Us Part 3, it's going to be somewhere closer to like 2035 if we're lucky. You used to get a new Uncharted game every 2 years. The way things are going, you'll be lucky to get a new Uncharted game every like 10 years now. This is not sustainable. Like, you know, Guerrilla Games, the Horizon people, ever wonder where Horizon 3 is? Well, it's the same situation as Naughty Dog, as GameIndustry.biz showed it here. Horizon Hunter's Gathering, the live service version of Horizon, is being rebooted essentially after severe negative feedback from players who have played it. Now the game will remove its live service elements, have a story mode, and reduce its scope because the parts that Sony cared about, you know, the Battle Pass microtransaction nonsense, wasn't working at all for them. Wow, really? Another live service pivot from Sony that didn't work? Oh, well, I am just shocked by that. Well, you see, the report from Bloomberg said, as you can see there, the overhaul reportedly began in June, and staff were told they have until December to meet the next milestone and show progress to executives. So that's December 2026. Great. The game will still have multiplayer apparently, but it will instead now be a single-player game with multiplayer added. Wow. Almost like what it should have been in the first place, Sony. That game is Sony just ran by idiots, man. Like, just get Herman Hulst out of there already. But the crazier part was in the report, it was also confirmed that just like Naughty Dog with Last of Us Online, this Horizon Hunters game was in the same situation. After Horizon Forbidden West, the majority of Guerrilla Games were not in fact working on Horizon 3, but this multiplayer spin-off game instead. So now the game is apparently DOA unless they pivot it into like a single player game, which will cost more resources and time. It'll also mean a potential Horizon 3, which is in active development, but not fully because again, everybody is working on the stupid multiplayer game. Well, you're gonna have to wait even longer now for that one, guys. Whoops, sorry, our bad. Like, come on, right? We're just a bunch of people here at Sony. We make mistakes, you know, the exact same mistakes over and over and seemingly never learn from it one bit, but we make mistakes, okay? It's okay. You're gonna get your Horizon 3 Intergalactic one day, in maybe 5 years, and that's being generous. But as GameIndustry.biz says it here, the opportunity cost of Sony going towards live service is horrific. Naughty Dog especially has been ruined by this design philosophy as well. The problem is this design philosophy, which has failed, is everywhere. So many AAA studios have released duds thanks to this live service pivot, and it's ruined the release schedule of so many because every single company wants their own Fortnite. But they can't because Fortnite is uniquely what it is, and nobody can reasonably create what Epic has with Fortnite without just being called a Fortnite clone. The very idea that Naughty Dog of all people, who is known for realism and grittier games, actually sat in a boardroom and went, what if we made The Last of Us, but it's like Fortnite? Logistically, it could work in a way, I guess, but by and large, eventually, the game would still start falling apart. Like, what happens when you start adding weapon skins and such to the game? How are people in the apocalypse fashioning guns after, I don't know, PlayStation icons? Why does some survivor have a gun with Daxter from the Jak and Daxter series on their AK-47? Eventually, you just have to realize that these things don't make any sense, and maybe it's just better to move on. Look, I've been saying this forever. This whole era of live service nonsense needs to be buried under the headquarters forever. The entire PlayStation 5 generation has been nothing but blunders 95% of the time, because of Sony's stupid leadership believing that they could replicate Fortnite somehow. And what annoys me with Naughty Dog especially is they were known for not just making great games, but defining the console generations that they were made on. Jak 3 is still amazing. The Uncharted games are great. Last of Us 1, awesome. Part 2 onwards is where the wheels began to fall off, but it's not even that Last of Us 2 has bad gameplay or world design or voice acting. No. Those are all great. It's like always the writing and the characters that are not good at all. But the answer here was not to turn this all into a live service game. Imagine if they had Ellie show up in this Last of Us faction game. She's like an NPC at your camp and she's like, wow, I'm Ellie. Thanks for being here. Please take this orange gun that does more damage. Like, it's just brutal to think what could have happened, man. But the answer here really is just to return to basics, right? Go back to what worked, not try to turn everything into NBA 2K or something. The Last of Us as a franchise has been re-released, by the way, in some format on PS5 around 9 times since 2020. That's egregious. That's a studio hurting for money that needs any sort of revenue coming in because they haven't made anything new in forever. But that's a symptom that is all over Western AAA development too. Longer cycles, budgets that are out of whack, projects canceling, burnout around every corner, and on top of all of that, you have this industry that struggles to separate genuine criticism from personal attacks too. Like, these developers in the studios are very fragile with their egos, and they no longer seem to care about making the best possible games, but just the biggest production instead, as if that matters. Uncharted 2 can be beat in like 10 hours, and guess what? It's freaking amazing. It doesn't need to be 60 hours long. Instead, they're making people wait lifetimes for a single game, and it's obviously not a good idea, because nobody benefits when talented developers are just burning themselves out every single time they have to make something. Like, they're making something great should not always require this unhealthy working condition to make it happen, but modern AAA has created that huge pressure with these 6 or 7, oh my god, 6, 7, 6, 7, you get the idea, okay? Development cycles, it's just getting out of hand, man. But the fact that Last of Us Online took thousands of developer hours and it was wasted is just proof that there is no North Star at Naughty Dog anymore. And what are you getting in its wake? Layoffs and studios closing, right? The industry expanded like crazy during 2020 because game studios thought it was the future until it wasn't. Now they're getting rid of everybody, and it's just causing more problems. But now you have a bunch of developers who believe criticism means it's personal now too. Like, the relationship between studios and devs and audiences has become more hostile now. Sure, developers deserve respect, but there's a difference between harassment and criticism. If a player invests time, money, emotions into these things, they're going to have opinions, right? Healthy studios learn from that. Unfortunately, stuff like social media amplifies the negativity. Everything becomes more emotional and personal. While it doesn't really help the developers, it doesn't help the players either when these studios continue to self-sabotage and do things that people are sick of seeing. Intergalactic is already hated because of the bald-headed woman main character, but Neil Druckmann doesn't seem to care because Anita Sarkeesian likes it. Great, the woman who married herself. How can this go wrong? But Neil and his studio are at a pivot point here, where this one release genuinely could make or break their studio going forward. I don't think Naughty Dog has suddenly forgotten how to make great games. The talent is still there, but it's become very clear that the production model in which Naughty Dog and others exist within is not sustainable, and it will fall apart unless things change in the future. How can one studio spend the better part of almost a decade on one release? How can any publisher justify those costs? And more importantly, how can the audience who keeps the lights on by buying these games remain patient when everything moves at a snail's pace? I know it's not just Naughty Dog, but they are one of the biggest examples here, but this affects the entire AAA industry, and Naughty Dog might think its legacy is secure. But legacy alone is not going to pay the bills or solve these modern development challenges. Crunch is bad, canceled live service games are another big warning, the longer dev time is another. Taken individually, maybe each issue seems manageable, but together they tell the story of an industry searching for a more sustainable way to build games, and it doesn't seem to have cracked the code yet. Even though they already knew how to do all of this 20 years ago without fail, now it's as if it's like lost technology or knowledge at this point. But whatever happens next, the lesson shouldn't be that bigger is always better. The greatest achievement isn't building the largest game imaginable every single time. It's about building a game that people actually enjoy without asking developers to sacrifice years of their lives or asking fans to wait nearly an entire console generation for the next adventure to arrive. So I hope that Naughty Dog figures their problems out. I really do. Same goes for Guerrilla and Sony as well. But as it stands right now, if the gaming industry as a whole had a North Star, it's clear to me, there is no direction. And every studio right now is a ship in a vast sea heading towards the end of the world, not knowing what awaits them in the endless abyss they're about to lead their teams into. So we need to change course. We need to stop doing things the way they're being done before it's too late. Otherwise, by the time we get the next Naughty Dog game, we're all going to be 50 years old with 2 kids and arthritis. And Neil Druckmann will be a corpse hooked up to a computer to keep him alive because he takes so long to make anything anymore. But what do you think? What is the North Star of modern gaming development to you? Is Naughty Dog cooked, or are they too heading towards complete oblivion as well? Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you guys next time.